A roll call.
Matt Rowe. Brett Bierce. John Castellanarian. Fisher Explanation. David McLaughlin.
Here.
Nick Potnowski. Here. Joe Brito. Glenn Goldsmith. Ann Powell Bokar. James Powell. Jacob Clay. Micah Cunningham. Travis King. Tim Welsh. Here. Morgan Birch. Darren Hayes. Justin Chenault. Michael Hoyt. Ken Krogh. Tamara Banks. Rupert Farley.
Here.
Larry Gross. Dustin Savage. And Rodney Thomas is online.
Here.
Can we pause for a moment?
Sure.
I just want to make sure that the
Okay.
I'll begin with one of them.
All right. Can folks hear us online now?
Can hear you. Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful.
And did we have anyone else online on the committee that we missed? Okay, great. All right, approval of the May 10th, 2023 CTAC agenda. I believe that you had some
Yeah.
suggested.
So we just wanted to make sure that folks were aware that there was some corrections needed for the agenda. So the item 6E, the Unified Work Program, changed from what was initially sent out. We'll walk you through the Unified Work Program. Basically what happened, we linked to the wrong item. It was sending you to the CMAC STBG allocation. So we've corrected that. We'll walk you all through it. We also have just a small additional item that we can talk to about our amendment, our bylaw changes and whatnot. We just need to walk through this carefully because we need to make sure that all of our at-large members, they have term limits. So they need to have been reauthorized by the policy committee before they can kind of vote on any items. So we just want to make sure we walk through, because I went through and we don't have records for any of our current at-large members that they've been renewed within the last 2 years.
Okay.
So be aware you might not be able to vote on those items at this particular meeting. We're going to have to do that for every single one of our at-large members. I was going through that and just need to make that.
It's another hoop to jump through, but it's good due diligence. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So move, this is Rupert.
Motion by Rupert, second?
I'll second.
Second, discussion.
Yes, what is the action item associated with 6F?
So we're currently within our public comment for the Transportation Improvement Program,
Right.
FY24 through to FY25, or FY27.
Right.
So that document's been made available, and so if anybody here has any comments or recommendations that you want coming out of the CTAC, then this is the opportunity to do so.
Okay, so it's just a comment period, it's not an action item. That's my question. It's not an action item then.
Okay.
You couldn't decide if
I mean,
you wish to.
We're not voting to recommend this to the policy committee. There's no action, it's just commentary.
Well, it's an action item to give, to show that we have the option, because I remember last year, there was, I forget exactly what it was, but there was something where it was something that we could have endorsed, but that wasn't clear, so we didn't move.
I guess it's like
about it.
action item question mark.
Yeah.
Like,
You-
like we could take an action or we could just do nothing.
Okay, all right, that was a possibility, okay.
Past
that's- Okay, then
Gives us the
I have,
ability that take an action.
then my point is not,
Hey, no.
I don't recommend any change to the agenda based on.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. The meeting minutes from April. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the meeting?
Mr. Rupert, I approve the meeting minutes of April.
Motion? Is there a second?
McLaughlin will second.
Second? Any discussion?
Real quick, my name does not have an H in it.
Oh,
I have a comment, but it's not pertinent to the vote, so I'll hold that.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Comment was in the meeting minutes, there were a couple action items that we're going to follow up on, and I just don't want those, and I don't mean we need to do them today, I didn't say that. We just, things get lost sometimes on follow-up items, so there's,
Fair.
just want to highlight that, that's all.
Can you be specific as to which ones?
Nah, you could, they're in there, one of them is the staff will provide, or, yeah, a couple, yes.
Right. Okay, now we're in public comment. Comments and questions from the members of the public are welcome at this time. Is there anybody here in the room that would like to make a public comment? Okay, is there anyone online who would like to make a public comment? Do we have any correspondence for public comment?
While we're doing this, I propose that it's comment, if anyone on the committee thinks we've forgotten something that should be followed up, just pop us an email, either John or myself, and we'll make sure that it's done.
I wasn't suggesting, if they're in the meeting minutes, I just was highlighting that.
Occasionally we forget something, right?
Right.
We're also human, so if you see we've forgotten one, just.
I didn't see one, no, I'm just saying.
So no correspondence? Okay. All right, public comment is closed. We move on to item 6A for CTAC bylaws.
so, continuing our discussion in the previous meeting about updating some of the, rules that we have for how, CTAC both elects and selects and rotates its, officer positions within the jurisdictions. Matt and FAMPO staff kind of worked to make changes to both a couple of the previous one, as well as to try to better clarify the language in it that's a little bit more concise, as well as better clarity, more flexibility for the election of officers. So those changes were provided in your package. One of the things that we did was we cleaned up kind of the first initial steps, the election of officers. Let's go back up. I was actually using it, right? It's okay. And we kind of quietly reduced the requirements that it had to absolutely follow a rotation schedule, that if there was no willing or eligible person to serve as in an offered position, there was another option that was provided that then it kind of opens up the position, the seats to anybody who is eligible for that. The officer positions still require at least a 50% agreement from the rest of the TAC, so we kept that. And we also put in the one-year term limit, and we clarified what if a officer is kind of moves up due to a vacancy in the position, depending on which month that comes into effect. So we looked at it as February, March, April, or May. We did not consider that a term of service, but if it was prior to that, there would be more than a half year's meetings, and so we consider that a full year of service.
And just to point out what John was talking about here, for instance, in section 3, it says the officer position should not be held consecutively by the same jurisdiction. And note that it says should and not shall. So it still gives us a little bit of flexibility, but does, put a bullet point right on there saying it should try to rotate from different jurisdictions.
Sections 2 and sections 3, those changes seem, just from an administrative point of view, quite good. Section 4 is where I'm starting to wonder again about problems that I might have to deal with goes wrong in the future, right? And it's got to do with wording. So
A question.
the last sentence, I don't know if I completely understand, because you put chair and or vice chair. So now I don't know what that means. Are you saying that a person can be a chair for 3 years in a row? Or are you saying that they can be vice chair for 1 year and chair for 2 years? Or what does that actually mean?
I would actually think that should just say or, so that someone could be vice chair for a couple of years and then they could be chair for a couple of years. I think that seems fine.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
carry on, Dave.
My comment on that was I read that, I said you can serve for 1 year and an additional single successive term. And that says, but no more than 3 years. Wouldn't it be no more than 2 years?
Well, isn't that what you're talking about with the partial term?
Right.
So, for example, if the current chair could serve, how long would he serve?
9 months.
9 months. Proceeds to the chair, he can run for a term and then he can run for a second term. And then
Okay.
Right, because like you could have that half year, then a full year term, like a little less than a half year,
Right.
then a full year term, then a re-election. So that's
It does
2.5 years.
3 years is probably the wrong number.
Yeah, we.
It should be 2.5, but
So you've
let's not use decimals.
I could explain that.
different wording, you could say.
Yeah,
Serve
anything word.
chair or vice chair consecutively for more than 2 years, excluding partial years, because there's we don't know how big.
Yeah, you could do that too. Yeah.
2 months, is it 9 months, is it excluding partial years? Or
Because I can see people years from now, not in this meeting, and go, oh, I can serve for 3 years, it says right there.
That's what worries.
Yeah.
Worries me is that the guy's gonna say, but it says chair for 3 years, I'm staying,
Yeah,
and I don't like that. And theoretically, it also has to be elected.
sure. Well, true, but I mean, the point is, I want
I get your point.
did we just, it's just need wording.
For that, the intent was that Mike could be vice chair for 2 years and then be chair for 2 years, or flip that they could go from chair to vice chair to chair, and then if there was an issue where they want to serve, they could get a second one, but it was actually trying to break up from holding the officer position for vice chair, chair, or.
We're not only avoiding miscellaneous, we're avoiding food. Essentially.
Slide back to prime minister, then back to. Yeah.
Robert McCauley of Zimbabwe was re-elected.
Okay.
2 years for, I think, 26 or 36 years. A long time. So, I mean, I don't trust voters quite as much as maybe everybody else does.
Wow.
We simplify things, if we eliminated the slash or right there where, so it would be shall not serve as chair and vice chair.
Just make it or.
Or just or. Get rid of the and the slash.
What about as an officer?
Yeah.
Well, no, they could be. Because that would eliminate the vice chair flip, because either way, you're an officer.
Hold on, I think you might have something there. So the chair and the vice chair can serve for 1 year with the option to be re-elected for an additional single successive term by the CTAC.
For the same.
I don't think there's the issues that we're trying to solve here. One is avoiding someone serving as 2 terms total as vice chair, and then 2 terms total as chair, and or vice versa.
Is that true?
I don't, that
Wait,
was,
wait, wait, wait.
I didn't
I don't-
think strongly about that.
I don't either.
I'm mostly thinking mostly about the chair, but
I don't either.
It's
So I
very-
think
Even
that's
know
what
why
clarify.
vice chair is in there, really,
I think then the second issue is.
Well, let's,
number.
well, wait, let's solve the first issue if we're gonna discuss them. So I can see a scenario, you're chair for 2 years, the vice chair is there for 2 years, and then the vice chair moves up to be the chair. And then has 2 years, so that's a 4 years, so I mean, I don't, so
So I
What do we
think that,
mean, what do we want to limit?
so I think that's where Nick's suggestion just now comes into effect, because it could just say no CTAC member shall serve as an officer for more than 3 consecutive years. And that way because the term limit is already explained in the first sentence of section 4. And then your suggestion there clarifies it.
Yeah.
So that
as
it is-
opposed to the, as it's worded right now, it seems to almost contradict. It doesn't, like, if you read it closely,
Yeah,
but it could be read to
I,
contradict.
I like that. That's just my opinion.
So that brings me to my second point.
Yes.
If the concern is be elected for more than 2 terms, the issue is the number 3. So if you are if you're appointed to a chair or a vice chair, that is not an election. So
Right.
should the wording be elected, not serve?
So I guess in your suggestion, it would be if you were elevated, well, I guess you're already vice chair if you're elevated. So then it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Because you could be a vice chair, then elevated. It's still an officer position. It's
Yeah.
still 1 year of being an officer.
Yeah.
And so if you make
I would argue for serve because then it doesn't matter how you get there. You're there.
right.
That makes sense.
But I think if you change the wording between appointed/elevated and elected, you can use the number 2 instead of 3 which is confusing.
There's no mechanism that allows the vice chair to be appointed.
Yeah,
They
I
have to be elected.
was elected mid-year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Only the chair that could be.
Only a vice chair can move to chair in the event of an absence, and
Yeah.
it's automatic.
And then you have to elect a vice chair.
This should not be this.
Trying to make it easy.
No, I know.
Definition of is.
That's a,
Don't even.
that's a deep cut. That's a throwback.
I like it.
You really, I mean, the key thing you really want to limit is the chairperson being the chairperson for more than 2 years. For the rest, it is less impactful.
Well, and I have that thought as well. My concern, the reason I think it is worth saying that putting the 3 years service as an officer is, what if you have someone, well, 2 and 2, but also what if you have someone who serves a year as chair and then so that he or she doesn't trigger the limits, goes to vice chair, and then, I don't know, things get far more interesting than they usually are, and and manages to bring about the end of that chair's term early.
Sure, but if we leave it like chair or vice chair for 3 years, then we can have a chairman in office for 3 consecutive years, plus a half term if they move up. It can be 3.5 years in total. Way that's worth. You've got to find a mechanism.
Well, and that's the point of the officer. So serving as an officer,
But you're operating on the assumption that the chairman will always have been the vice chair before, and that was not.
But it's
Not
it
necessarily.
prevents 2 people from basically swapping back and forth
Yeah.
over time.
I
Yeah.
understand that, but
Who have, like we just had last chairman, was not the vice chair. Last chairman was elected straight to the chair of the floor without any experience in it, only been here for 2 or 3 months in total on the committee. Made the chair. So if in this case, if you have a person who is elected without having been vice, they be the chair for 3 years in a row.
Is there any way to have subsections under the section? So there is a sentence for the chair and a sentence for the sub chair, or the vice chair, sorry. And that clarifies it?
No, it says you can only serve for an additional single successive term.
that
Yeah.
language to me says you can't serve for 3 years as chair.
Yeah, correct. So like, for instance, someone could be vice chair for a year, elected for chair for 2 years, and then they got to take a break.
Yeah.
So I would suggest making that change. The no CTAC member shall serve as an officer for more than 3 consecutive years, or not serve as an officer consecutively for more than 3 years.
I feel like that's better.
Yeah,
And then maybe
Yeah.
we can say for more than 3 consecutive years, but no more than 2 that as chair.
Well, your previous sentence covers that.
Yeah, the previous.
Well, I know, but just for emphasis.
No, I think the previous sentence covers it.
Okay.
I like your amendment.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm speaking too much of this. I like your amendment.
Okay,
Take out chair, vice chair, replace it with officer. Done.
Okay,
okay, I motion for that.
okay,
I'll second it.
okay, so this is a motion to adopt the bylaws changes with that change.
Correct.
Well,
Okay.
same by, we're not done going through it.
Okay,
Just approving that one.
well, that's all right, we can have discussion time now with that motion on the floor, so
So
that's
maybe the
fine.
motion not to approve, but motion to make the change to the proposal. Just from a Roberts.
Yeah, I like it,
Yes.
because there's more we're gonna change,
Okay,
I think.
okay, so we'll consider that a motion to adopt the change to the bylaws as currently drafted. So I guess we can vote on that now and still continue discussion about the bylaws.
Right.
Okay,
That's just, is that one item? Yeah.
further discussion on the change for section 4. All right, hearing none, all of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Did you have wait a minute, did we have a motion and a second?
Yes.
yes, we did, we did. All right, continue discussion on the other sections.
I had one about, where am I now? Okay. Section, articles. Okay, let's start Article 3, Section 2. It says that, and this is hairy, a majority vote of the current voting membership shall be required. When are we going to get 17 people to vote yes on anything, let alone attend a meeting?
Yeah, it shouldn't be missed.
Or do we do it like what you just said, in accordance with our meeting minutes, or let's see, where, section 7 or something, where it says it's a majority vote of those members present? It's 8 people making the decision or 33 people making the decision.
Yeah.
Or maybe the compromise would be is some.
We'd never get 17 people being there to vote on it.
Maybe a super majority of members present.
Like 2/3 of members present.
2/3, 3/5,
Well,
something like
but
that.
it depends on how we do.
What section are we on again? Sorry.
It's section 2. It's section 2.
Got it.
Yeah, that one. It's actually not any of the highlighted text. It's the second sentence.
Majority vote of the current voting membership shall be required for election to the office. Has that always been the case?
Yeah, I mean, that's how, that's
And I
right now.
I don't know how we did it. I don't think we did.
I would move to delete current voting membership from that line.
Majority vote shall be required for election to the office.
Yes,
Those present.
Change it to members present?
sorry.
Isn't that a little vague? Shouldn't you change it to the
It's
members?
not vague, it means the people present.
So that would
I think that,
that would be in accordance with Article 6 is what you're saying.
That would be in accordance with tradition too. Back in the day, that's the way we did it.
It would,
No, I understand that.
it would be in accordance with Article 6, how we vote.
Okay.
I mean, it says right there how we vote. Yeah. If that's what we want, if that's adequate, unless you want to make it a super majority or
well,
something.
no, I do like the majority because let's say, for instance, you had 3 candidates, you would need to have a majority vote to win the chairmanship. So it would almost force you to have a runoff or a ranked choice or something like that. So someone doesn't win with 38% of the vote, you know?
There's a lot of people run for this office.
I know.
In elections in this country are less than that.
Building a strong CTAC future where everyone wants to participate.
Think about who would really want it.
Exactly.
It's a majority of a properly already.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's not just any old one.
I agree with Rupert's change. Do you want to make a motion for that change?
I just did.
You did? Okay. Is there a second? Second. Second. Further discussion. It's actually to remove wording. It's just, you take out of the current voting membership. So it says a majority vote shall be required.
And then in accordance with Section 6,
Yeah.
Yeah, can
Article 6,
in accordance with Article 6?
I would be,
I mean, we could do that. A majority vote, comma,
Yeah.
in accordance.
I mean, we
with
just had a long
section-
conversation about what if people just.
Go down to.
Yeah, scroll down to section 4, why don't we just to
Okay,
take a little more concrete, I mean. I'm not totally worried about it.
Rupert, would you be okay with amending your motion to say, instead of just deleting it, just say, comma, in accordance with section 6, comma, shall be required?
Of course, that's fine.
Okay,
Are you talking about Article 6 or 6?
Article 6,
I say section 6, I'm
Article 6,
sorry about
sentence. That makes sense. All right, so I will second McLaughlin will second Rupert's amended motion as amended.
Okay, further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Is there anything else we were going, other than the other tracked changes on this, is there anything else anybody wants to discuss?
Just a second. Yes. Yes,
Yeah, I think we changed that.
easy, yeah.
About a month or 24 months ago. somewhere around there.
So, let's see, under Article, 4,
Okay,
Section 3,
it's just,
oh, wait, that can't be right then. Well,
what's your Roman numeral say?
5 section?
wait.
IV or VI?
Lost my mind. Article
Because that's quorum if you're looking for quorum.
where was it? It talks about, oh, okay, here, wait, here it is. It's, okay, it's under section 3, I'm sorry, the second paragraph there. Should a jurisdiction not have a willing or eligible, that meets the conditions, should that not read section 3 and section 4, not section 2 and section 3? The section 2 just takes you back to section 2 and says you must meet the criteria in section 4 and 3 and 4 below.
Well, if you look at the amendments, they actually changed the numbering. So what had been,
Yeah.
I think what had been, no, maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, that's not-
I'm wrong.
that's what I'm saying. It takes you to section 2. It doesn't, there's not really conditions in section 2, but there are conditions in section 3 and 4. That's all I'm saying.
Scroll on
Yeah,
to for a second.
I think you should add it.
Uh,
More than-
Because even section 2 says you must be qualified within 3 and 4.
Well, yes, but it also requires you to have a majority vote. That's what it's referring to.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, 3 and 4.
Yeah, we can add 2, 3, and 4.
Why don't we just say conditions set?
no, it's talking about, then the officer position shall be open to any other eligible and willing CTAC member that meets the conditions. It doesn't say whether they're elected.
Well, you could just say meets the conditions in these bylaws.
Hey, that's nice.
I mean,
Okay. Just.
I don't have problem. 2 and 3 doesn't make any sense.
So.
well,
okay,
if you just
conditions
change it
set
to
forth.
in these bylaws, it refers to the whole
No,
thing.
that's right. No, that's what I'm saying. The change makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm moving for a change. Yeah,
Would you like to make a motion for that particular change?
I would like to move so it says in accordance with the bylaw.
All right. Is there a second? to that?
Meets the conditions in accordance with the bylaw, yeah.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay. Anything else?
Let's see.
We made a lot of sausage today. It came out pretty good in the end, I think. But yeah, Rupert,
Do we need a motion to approve the remainder of the,
Hold,
are we there yet?
stand by. I think I got one more.
Okay.
Section 6. I should have written,
For section 6.
Article 3, Section 6.
Okay.
It was strange. The wording was just a little weird. If the vice chair is appointed as chair occurs after February 1st, it will not count as a year of service. It's just the wording of that just needs to be clean.
Vice Chair.
It's awkward as heck. If the vice chair is appointed as chair, which occurs and occurs after
It's
February.
English, that's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, the grammar.
It's not the comment.
If the vice chair is If the vice chair's appointment, take the word skirt out. then I think-
Oh, yeah.
Take out occurs.
Remember, yeah.
After it will not
Yeah.
count.
So I stumbled over about 3 times. What do we mean here?
Yeah, yeah.
Take the word
That's-
skirt out.
So I move we change that last sentence to remove the word occurs.
Okay, is there a second for that?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Anything else? One thing. Gift bag and
So we need a motion now to approve the remainder of the documents. So moved.
so moved. There's a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And because we have a majority vote of the members present. So Article 8,
All right.
All around.
good job.
Thank you all very much for your input and suggestions.
I-
Make things a lot clearer, easier to understand. So,
I'll tell you the way it was worded and you guys put it together, staff, I thought it was well done.
yeah, you got into those areas where it's like you pull one thread and you start to untangle.
But no, I think all in all, it's really well done.
Okay, recommendation for new CTAC office discussion. This is where people start talking about how they want to run for the next term.
So who's in line?
Well, no, but we're going to do nomination. Well, I mean, this could be a good time for people to say that they would be interested in doing this so that we can have discussions on the side over the next month.
You can email me to discuss what entails, which is usually just email like a week earlier saying, hey, this.
So the intention of the last discussion is that we do follow the concept of trying to go in order and rotate in a schedule. My question is, who's next in line to be the chair? It's not Fredericksburg.
Well, now that we've changed the bylaws, it could be Spotsy or Stafford. It could be,
Wait a minute. No, I thought we said we were going to try. We try and go with, that was the initial.
well, no, we were going to try to find a different jurisdiction other than the one that's currently serving. I'm not going to run for reelection. So by our bylaws, the next chair should not. Right.
Amended bylaws don't list a particular rotation.
I read it, it was.
It used to be.
It should be, the language was should, as you pointed out.
Yeah, right, I agree.
And so,
Very
so
good.
while in the direction, or
Point, especially I picked up another typo bylaws, there's a letter Y in section 3.
Well, that's a technical adjustment.
we're trying to figure this Spanish.
A grammatical mistake can just get fixed without a motion. Yes, Rick.
So, have you served a full term?
I served like 90% of a term by the time that the term will be over. It was
Thinking since,
1 month.
since you didn't serve a full term, then I thought that shouldn't preclude the city of Fredericksburg from stepping in.
Nothing technically precludes the
Right.
next chair from being from Fredericksburg. It's just that it should be somebody from one of the other two localities.
Good.
And it's not specified the rotation anymore.
There's no rotation. It just says we should mix it up.
We're going back to the way it was when I first started here. It's customary to do it that way. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, okay.
Yeah, because I mean, this is what happened a couple years ago where we got stuck in a thing where we couldn't find anybody to take over from Spotsylvania because no one from Spotsylvania wanted to step up. And so then, you know, to Ian's point, someone stepped up that was in the jurisdiction, was the only person, and they hadn't had a lot of CTAC experience up to that point.
Okay. Well, I personally am satisfied with the present arrangement. I was going to recommend that we continue with it, but it sounds like you're ready to step down.
I am. There are other, because I do serve on other things locally, and so I want to be able to give all the things the full attention that they deserve, and I want to make sure that I'm not shortchanging anything. I feel like at this time, I still would like to be on the CTAC, but I think I would like to step down as chair. I love working with everybody. I love the work itself. I think we do some good things here, but I just think someone else should serve.
Fair. Absolutely. No need to explain. That's fair.
Well, who's interested?
I'm not, by the way.
Yes.
I have a question. You
Yeah.
said about someone having more experience. That's not over.
That's not in there, but I'm just talking about from a practical standpoint.
I get that, but if it's not in there, it's no criteria.
Yeah, the criteria is just be on CTAC. I mean, that really is the only thing. It could be their first meeting and they could be elected chair.
I just,
Nothing stops that.
I just want to.
Yeah, yeah.
When you say there's like, for how long, chair or vice?
There's no limit. There's no limit. Okay.
I will say as vice chair, I'll commit to. So, my, next year, my life will be very interesting. So,
Is there anybody else from Spicy here? Just me? I'll throw my name in a hat because I'm from Spicy. I've only been to this one, my second meeting, so if you want to hold that against me. And we're not done with this meeting yet, you might not want to look. When there's election of officers?
Next month. I definitely have that right. It is in June. It's not, okay.
who are our responsible members?
Jacob Clay, Micah Cunningham, Travis King, Tim, Morgan Birch. That's it at this point in time.
So we only have one. I'm sorry. I was just gonna-
Morgan Birch and Tim are the ones who frequently. Doing it twice makes you.
Okay, I'll be here. I won't miss any of them.
Yeah, and we have at-large members from Spotsylvania, but they don't count as Spotsylvania members, right?
Anybody online?
Glenn Goldsmith, Larry Gross, and Ronnie Thomas.
Yes, this is Glenn Goldsmith of Stafford. At this time, I cannot serve as the chair. I'm very interested in remaining on the board, but at this time I cannot serve as chair. Currently, I'm out of town, logging in from Minnesota, so my time is a little hectic right now. I do apologize, but again, I'm here available, but chair at this time is not good for me.
Okay. So,
Couple
go
of
ahead.
things we could do based on past experience. Message traffic to each of the people from the three, Spotsville, Stafford, and Fredericksburg. Say, we have an election come up. We really need people to step forward, and ask them to do that. And phone calls could go to follow up to the people by. So, for example, I remember going to Dave and say, "Can you get anybody from Stafford to do this, Dave? You were the former president, so." It's
Right. Well, another just, yeah, and again, I'm just, I'm not trying to election year or anything, but you said that you can't necessarily commit to a full year. You could be elected as chair and you could be elected as vice chair. And if you ever need to step down, you'll also have some more meetings under your belt. So then you can slide into the chairman role if you decide you want to do that.
Possibility.
Okay.
I would need to discuss with.
Sure.
What? Time commitments outside of meetings is my major concern. This last month, we had a concern about the policy committee meeting. And that was, what is the commitment there for the chair?
Attending the meeting and then answering a question if a question comes up about an action that we took in the CTAC that they want to discuss. Like the last time that I spoke on something was when we added that clarification about the river crossing to just kind of hammer home the point that you know, anything that you see here is just part of the traffic model. It wasn't necessarily, we're going to be able to bridge here, you know.
Yeah.
I did speak to that, and that was about 3 months ago.
So if that is a concern in the bylaws, you can actually designate somebody as the point of contact for the CTAC to the policy committee.
Okay.
So if you can't make the meeting, you can send the vice chair.
Yeah.
And say, please, will you go? I can't make.
Right.
For policy.
That's why I
Actually,
reached out to
any-
you, because I couldn't
any
make the
CTAC
meeting.
member.
Yeah.
It was also the day of, and I was like, oh.
I know, something came up, and it just.
And I'll also add, the chair is not a voting position, it's only advisory, again, you can.
Yeah, no, it's the time commit though.
You don't get to sit at the
No.
big table, you guys sit on the side.
With the rest of us.
The only other thing is, of course, you've got to work with the staff member at FAMPO just to put the agenda together, but typically,
Yeah.
John or whoever one day replaces John will give you a draft agenda, and then you go through to go, can you add this one item, can you take that one item off? But produce.
Well, I've been part of that already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I looped in the vice chair.
Exactly, so you basically do that, you chair the meetings and attend the policy committee meeting when you can, and when you can't, you send somebody to represent the CTAC. That's basically the work involved. You can do additional things if you want to, but those are the kind of core things. Other than that, there's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
That you have.
Most of the stuff that I've done with John for getting the meeting agenda set up is usually just done through email. I think we talked for about 30 minutes last week to get the bylaw stuff kind of straight. It wasn't even 30 minutes, it was 10 minutes, okay. It's bylaw, so it always feels longer, so.
Well, if no one else, if no one from Spotsy steps forward, I will consider it.
Okay.
I'll type my way.
And if you're into serving, please do.
I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll do it.
All right.
You don't want me to do it? I'll be here.
No, you got the two people already.
All right, I'm ready to move on to item C. Okay, great. FAMPO River Crossing Study Presentation and Report.
Okay, so one of the major work items that FAMPO has been involved in with the last few months, if you are not aware, is that we have been tasked by Stafford County and City of Fredericksburg to look at potential river crossings between the two jurisdictions west of I-95, which turns out to be a rather kind of short corridor. All right, we can move on. Why are we doing this? One of the outcomes coming out of the East-West study, the consultants said, if you really want to address a lot of our East-West movements, a lot of folks are trying to move north-south, and in order to do so, they have to make East-West movements. They have to go on 17 or Route 3, connect to Route 1 or 95. They have to move east-west to continue. All right, move north-south to continue those east-west movements. In addition to that, they've also identified kind of a new Western network in Spotsylvania to try to create a route west of 95 that would basically act kind of like Route 1 on the other side. So it's creating an additional northwest spine. In addition to the East-West study, FAMPO was involved in a freight summit, and one of the products that came out of that study was that this region has some of the highest bottlenecks for freight corridors, but I would say that probably applies to more than just freight of anywhere else in Virginia. And one of the reasons that is that despite the Rappahannock being a very big natural resource, we had very limited number of crossings. And so when one of those crossings develops a hiccup, the rest of the system completely kind of starts shutting down. And that's kind of coming back to the reliability is that we have addressed kind of through various projects previously, and currently the I-95 corridor, you know, we're now experiencing that there are incidents that are happening now multiple times a week that will create a backup from Cool Spring Roads into Stafford, all the way through downtown Fredericksburg, all the way down to William Street and Route 1, Route 3, and then down into Spotsylvania. Like, that's how bad some of the congestion is. And so it causes kind of systemic and network lockup. And in some of the other studies that we're looking out to is that as the region grows, as we add more and more individuals into this area, the limited network starts breaking down more and more and more. So we start seeing bigger congestion issues and really a limited lack of options moving forward as far as how much we can widen to ease congestion in spot treatments. So next slide. So this was one of the products that you can see that we are seeing within our freight network. Average speed on 95 tends to plummet towards the late afternoon. And what we're seeing is that it's not necessarily something that we can control as a region. It appears that freight traffic that moves along the Northeast corridor hits our region in this late afternoon that corresponds with our peak evening rush hour. So our local folks are trying to either, if they're commuting to and from DC or points north, they're happening if they're commuting within our region, east-west, and have to just make a bridge connection. It's happening right when our peak freight trucks hit our region. And that's why you see that it almost seems like every single day we drop to an average speed of close to 30 miles an hour on I-95 as an average. So half the time it's worse than that.
I assume it came out in these discussions, this could be eliminated by congestion pricing.
Yeah. If the secondary network could, if you're going to displace, if folks are going to find it too expensive to pay at peak time, what's the next route?
Public transportation.
Public transportation would be great, but we don't have the infrastructure for that, the kind that would make a significant impact. I mean,
Just don't say we have the support.
Congestion pricing works really well when you've got other alternatives.
We don't have the infrastructure for
You have a
that.
limit.
We've got more infrastructure than we need if we just put congestion pricing into place.
Politically, it isn't gonna happen.
I think
All we need to do our commitment to the interstate system, which is to provide fast mobility for the military, is 2 lanes in each direction. Anything more than 2 lanes could be handled by congestion pricing. Keep it cleared up. I think it's,
Chairman, if I could just.
Go ahead.
Congestion pricing works in big cities. And it works in big cities because there are alternatives, right? If there are no alternatives, congestion pricing just becomes a tax, because you've got to drive anyway. Congestion pricing works when I can do this other thing. So when it gets pricey, no, I'm not going to pay. I'm going to do this other thing. And the other things.
sorry, I'm not getting any of this. You're not close enough to the mic.
So congestion pricing works very well in big cities because by effectively taxing the thing you don't want people to do.
Works very well on the interstate too. We've got evidence of it on the hot lanes right now.
Well, that's not actually congestion pricing.
That's exactly congestion pricing.
So can I just get back to the example of a big city? So the concept of congestion pricing, they have it in London and many other cities, is you don't want people to get into the inner core of your city driving alone in their car and everybody doing it, because then you have congestion and then you end up with all your roads clogged. So to solve that, if you don't want to keep widening every road and knock down houses to widen those roads, you have to get people to try another option. Don't get in your car alone and drive into this city center. Now it works in a place like London because you've got the London Underground.
And it's here in Fredericksburg.
No, we don't have congestion pricing in Fredericksburg. You've just been arguing that we should get
congestion pricing all the way from here to Washington DC, and a foreign company is putting plenty of bucks in their pocket as a result of it.
But that's not proper true congestion pricing, though. It's a toll. And a toll.
Congestion pricing is a toll.
Well,
The toll, it varies depending on congestion. That's exactly what they do. The toll goes up when it gets congested. The toll goes down when it doesn't get congested.
and I would then argue that it's not working because it's not pushing people onto VRE. So it's actually not working.
Well, I think the biggest difference also is that in a city like London, you're trying to prevent cars from going into the center of the city and to use public transportation. Whereas our issue here isn't people trying to come into Fredericksburg. Everybody's trying to get through Fredericksburg. We're just on it.
It works,
When-
I don't think it
but-
works perfectly on the hot lanes right now, or express lanes, whatever you want to call them.
And
So why wouldn't it work on the regular lanes?
because coming back to this freight thing, when containerized containers to get them went from $4,000 to 18,000 in a couple of months, they just said, we're eating the cost and we're doing it anyway, we're going to pass the cost on. Because they are price insensitive, they are inelastic in their approach, and our core issue with, particularly with the large trucks coming through our region, it's just the cost of doing business. They
The
don't
cost-
care about the
Then the
congestion.
cost, if the cost went up, they would move that freight to the railroad.
Oh,
But the point is, it isn't working because it's not shifting that traffic off of the I-95.
It's
So
getting the
they're
track, it's working perfect.
Failing.
It's working perfectly on the hot lanes. Just take the same concept and put it on the regular lanes and it'll work there too.
And
And you'll
we
have
can-
money left over to pay for the transit.
You're misunderstanding the point. Where is the traffic from the hot lanes going?
Who cares? Just tell them
No,
to,
no, no, we do care because congestion pricing is a purpose. It's not just a tax. It has a purpose, and the purpose is to shift traffic somewhere else.
yes,
So where is it going?
freight is going to the rails,
And
persons are
not. It's
sorry.
not. It's going to the regular lanes.
correct.
Yeah.
talking about putting congestion pricing on the regular lanes.
Exactly. But then where's the traffic going to go then?
I just told you, the freight goes to the railroads and
It can't. Right now, the freight railroad is at 94% capacity. We can't fit any more on it.
yeah, well, we've got plenty of railroad tracks that's not being used, like the 301 corridor.
Put a pin in that. I do want to come back to 301. Let's hear the rest of this and
Sure.
let's talk about 301.
Let's
in a
move to the
minute.
next slide. So this was taken in April 4th. You can see there's a very small little red dot where there was an accident basically on the northbound I-95.
It's at the river.
Yep.
Yeah.
It actually, you can actually see.
I've got my
impact.
glasses. To the left.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah. And as a result, if you look at the entire Google map, everything north of the river, green. Everything south of the river, dark red, adjusted. And that's where the bottlenecks is, because it literally metered out the traffic to improve conditions going north.
So that was northbound.
I remember that day. I was subbing for a class for 2 hours because the teacher took 2 hours to get to Colonial Forge, which is Swansea.
The following day was the day where they had the police shootout. And I believe 2 days later, we had a similar incident. And then April 12th, the rainstorm. Then April 12th, there was another accident where I was trying to go from Freddie Donuts to Mary Washington, and it took me 45 minutes.
Freddie's Donuts to Mayor Wash.
Yes, Mary Washington ended on the other side of the.
Okay, let's say-
I had to cross Route 1, and because it was so backed up, there was a tractor trailer that just blocked the box for 20 cycles. Of course he did. So because that was the only way he was going to pursue.
Yeah.
So this is not a isolated instance. This is our new normal. So we're getting into it. So next slide. And when we start looking around at other regions, when we compare other MPOs, I'm not talking about Richmond, Nova, or the beach. Let's look at ours. We're number 4. Let's look at 5 and 6. Where are they at? If you look at Roanoke, which is a little bit, significantly, almost 2/3 of our size, they have 27 bridge crossings. Granted, the Roanoke River at that point in time is smaller, but they have roads that basically snake along the river and constantly connect. They have a lot of infrastructure for the given population. If you look further south, kind of towards my hometown in Petersburg, Tri-Cities area, they're a smaller jurisdiction. They actually had more bridge crossings. They have a greater options. With us getting the new local lanes, we're coming into parity of Petersburg for interstate number of lanes. If you start looking at their other support, Temple Avenue, US Route 10, US Route 1, which their Route 1 looks more like our Chatham Bridge. Actually, it might have been like previously the same bridge. You start seeing that they have 3 4-lane options. We kind of have 3, but it's different. And then they have another couple of 2. So we actually need several different bridge options to start matching Petersburg. Now, granted, they border right next to the Richmond NPO, and a lot of their traffic is Richmond and Hampton Roads. They're kind of in between, but they have the infrastructure we don't.
I'll also say that with Petersburg, with the bridge lanes there, it's spread out much
Yeah.
more than it is here, because that also includes 295,
Yeah,
right?
that is
Which is
295,
a bypass of Richmond and Petersburg. We have no bypass here. Like there's no bridge that takes you from Spotsylvania to Stafford and back. Everything goes through the city.
So,
It's a good point, city guys.
and so what you're having is, for us, just looking at our volumes, like each lane is basically having to do almost 40% more volume just currently, ignoring population and everything else. All of our roads have to do more as a result. So we are lagging behind across the board. And yeah, our volumes are surprisingly similar to with the lack of infrastructure. So next slide. So we did an analysis. So this is a tool that we have now that we haven't had, say, 10 years ago. In fact, if you were proposed this 10 years ago, you're probably going to win an innovation award. So we now have a better idea through big data that's anomalized of where people are going kind of to different block groups in different areas. So if we go to the next slide, we can kind of get a gauge of, okay, where are folks in Stafford going south of the river? And based on kind of this cell phone data that's normalized, so it's comparable, we can see that overwhelmingly they're going to Central Park and the Spotsylvania Town Center. You have a little bit less traffic going to Mary Washington Hospital area and downtown, and then it kind of disperses. But Central Park accounts for almost as much traffic as number 2 and number 3 combined. So we know that there's a heavy amount of volume going west of 95. If we go to the next slide, we looked at it.
West of 95?
West of 95.
West of 95,
Yes.
okay.
If we look at, okay, where's the city of Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania going? We see that they are also primarily going west of 95 to the Southern Gateway area, both north and south of Warrenton Road. Number 2 is actually in the Ferry Farm area. They're going to Walmart. You can actually see how much traffic Walmart is generating in this area for one small area. There's a couple other things there, but I don't think that many people are relying on Kawasaki, the power, water power sports thing that's next to it. So you're seeing a lot of traffic being generated.
I want to point out that there are 3,000 residential units that are going to be built around number 7 and number 10 in that general area in the next 5 to 10 years. They're already approved and they're ready to go.
So if you go to the north side, because we're at this point in time, we're counting every single trip that's inside the region. If they're going to DC, we're ignoring them. If they're going to Richmond, we're ignoring them. But we're looking at, okay, if they're making a river crossing. So if they're going in Spotsylvania to Spotsylvania, who cares? If they're making a river crossing, where are they going? And we're seeing this very strong cluster happening around the 95 border and are actually west of 95. Coley, can we go to the next slide? So side by side, it becomes very obvious, where do folks want to go? They're going to those points. And particularly if they are, as growth was mentioned, west of 95. If you're west of 95, you have to come all the way back, cross at either 95 or Route 1, most likely, and then cut back. And this was something that was identified as a common movement in the east-west study. So this is where we can say that in previous studies that have looked at river crossings, this is new. We can actually pinpoint where folks are going in a comparable way.
But I don't understand, if people are going up there and going down there, there's a Walmart on both sides of the river, there's a Lowe's on both sides of the river, there's a Target on both sides of the river.
Wegmans.
Is that it?
There's no good produce on.
So you need a Wegmans in Stafford.
There is a Wegmans in number 1 there on the Fredericksburg side.
I live on 17.
Well, I'm just wondering, okay,
It's Wegmans.
why are you coming to Central Park?
Wegmans. Because if I want good produce, I'm not getting it at Giant. I'm not getting it at,
Hey, I agree. I
Aldi.
live down Route 2. We ain't got nothing either.
I'm going to Wegmans because that's the only good place, good produce.
Also say the movie theater in the.
Right.
Also movie theaters and also Fred Nats.
Total what?
And Expo
I
Center.
got an ABC Center, it's ABC store, but
Okay, so, okay.
It's a stopping destination. Yeah, go ahead.
so,
Before
yeah,
before we leave the slides, it's safe to say that the result of the east-west study is that there is no east-west demand. It's all north-south.
so here they're going to the cinemas, right?
And the mall.
And the restaurants.
There's not, I haven't
In the
a
mall.
good movie out in 5 years, I don't know why.
Here they're going to the Frednet Stadium,
Mhm.
they're going to the Walmart, etc. So all of those things are drawing a large number of people.
There's also medical offices in number 1 too.
That's big.
Costco's a big draw, there's all.
Right. There is east-west movement. You can see it with the Walmart.
And number 3 is the hospital, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank God we built 2 more of those.
And there's a big demand in Celebrate Virginia for hospital.
Next slide. So when we're looking at, okay, which of these groups, the trips, the destinations, will basically be served by the potential river crossing option as requested by the county and the city, we've identified it, and you can see of the top 20 trip generators, they skew west. So the ones that would be served by a river crossing would be some of the higher demand items. So, next slide.
So that's, although, can you go back to that? So the ones that have the arrows on them would benefit from the river crossing.
Yes.
Well, specifically the western river crossing.
Is there an eastern river crossing?
Well,
There's not anymore.
I mean, just, this is if you
No.
did a river crossing west of 95, the arrows signify the ones that,
Would benefit.
yes.
Whereas if you look east of the I-95, there are multiple bridges across the river.
Right.
There's Chatham Bridge, there's Route 3, you've got multiple bridges and options, where people that need to get across on the western side, there's
Mm.
Like Oregon.
It's just like you would get more bang for your buck, because like of the top 6, of the top 7, 5 of them are on the west side right there. Okay.
So, FAMPO staff worked to identify, at the time we were working to identify 4 various river crossing options. The city of Fredericksburg requested that we add the slip lane model, option into one of our model runs to see how that would potentially impact. And a couple of the other, options, like option 4 was previously kind of assumed, or at least modeled within the East-West 2050 study, but we wanted to pull that and make it comparable for the 2023 data, because we're using current year data. And then we applied kind of slightly different metrics. We were using to identify, okay, what part of the existing road network could potentially handle, not handle, what improvements would kind of be needed to make, and how we could distribute traffic to see, okay, how is the model going to, if the river crossing is, how's the model going to collect traffic north or distribute traffic north of the river, and then distribute it north and south? Where are folks going? Are we seeing it rush one direction or another way? This gives us a couple of different options that we can kind of start comparing different treatments. So route 1 is the slip lane. Option 2 assumes a route east of England Run. There's a small creek that kind of follows along that line. And so we're looking at options east that would connect higher up into Celebrate Virginia Parkway there. Option 3 makes and some of these also assume that there's a small connection between Commerce Parkway and the very kind of north center to Celebrate Virginia Parkway, just to connect to the eventual Mine Road Extension project. Route 3 kind of looks at the distribution if you connect to both Green Bank as well as Celebrate Virginia, and then hook over, kind of trying to avoid some of the easement. Option 4 is like the most common direct line that a lot of folks will talk about, just let's connect Gordon Shelton and Celebrate Virginia. And that's assuming that most of the traffic will use Celebrate Virginia coming through. And then option 5 looks at the western route, which assumes let's connect all the way over to Green Bank and run it down the Cannon Ridge Peninsula and connect further south. That would try to avoid some of the eastment that kind of cluster, kind of where option 4 currently is.
I would like to see a tweak of option 2 to go around England Run Lane, so it doesn't impact the about a dozen houses. So I'd like to just see how that would work in the study if,
So
do that.
funny you bring that up because I actually talked to John last week and I was just like, okay, I was looking at the options here and I felt like one of the ones that I know that had been discussed at some point but wasn't on here was the go to the end of Celebrate Virginia Parkway, head south into option 5, not that Green Bank Road part of it, but just the part that crosses the river and connects at the big intersection where the Sheets is. But then John was telling me that in a sense that's kind of been modeled because option 4 would have the same sort of traffic count that that option I considered was. So based on what Joe said, does that kind of fit into one of the options there where you'll kind of get the same count?
So we would basically see this a near identical amount. I would say near identical because it is taking kind of travel time. So it depends on how long you make the lines. But for looking at a slightly eastern option, we'll see very similar results. It might actually skew it to how it compares to the other western routes. And I can get into that a little bit more. But particularly with like options 3, 4, and 5, you know, the amount of travel time depending on where you connect. So option 3 has 2 roads feeding down and then it kind of hooks and makes a river crossing into Fredericksburg versus options 5 and 4, which actually basically has 1 primary road feeding into it. So we can start kind of making cross comparisons within the network and the required systems. But with option 2, we can move it further east, but it's already assuming that you're going to tie in at that point in Celebrate. And then I'm just modifying the distance of the road, which granted that would have potential cost changes, but at this high level, all costs are very ballpark to begin with. But it'll have a negligible amount of travel time on that road. So the time benefits, you're not going to see large shifts. You would see a few cars here and there either add or disappear depending on where it's placed.
In essence, your suggestion is being modeled.
Yeah.
It's just not drawn in the way
Okay.
that you may.
yeah.
Right, I just like to look at all the
Fine.
options.
These models aren't alignments, like actual let's build it alignments. This is just, these model is just telling us how long the section length kind of has to be to tell the model how long folks are going to tolerate driving a certain amount of distance, as well as telling it where that model, the north point where it connects in, and where the south point where it's going to distribute the vehicles within the existing network. That's really how the models are differentiating on the runs.
Yeah, we can make all sorts of suggestions to change these lines later.
Yeah.
But this is just the model time.
All right, can we roll through the options relatively quick?
Yeah.
Option 1, the slip lane, no environmental infringements, it'll impact commercial property. It'll be an exit only, so anybody coming out of Central Park has to go on Route 3 or Cowan or Fall Hill. And there's no other river crossing it. It's assuming the river crossings we're having now. Option 2 is the Eastern Bridge. This connects as Commerce Parkway to Celebrate, and then it hooks around. So there's a large environmental easement kind of to the west of option 3 that we're doing, or we have to be cognizant of. And so that one is saying, okay, how far do we have to kind of loop around? And that's kind of the minimum distance that we would have to loop around for those. Option 3 is also trying to avoid some of the larger chunks of easements. And so it kind of comes down, and then this is also factoring in travel time of how much you have to route around an easement to make it do it. It still has to go through some easements, but it's trying to avoid the big ones. And so it collects both down Green Bank with an improvement, as well as the existing Celebrate Virginia. Next slide. Option 4 does not assume any improvements to Green Bank and just assumes that we're going to build off of the existing Celebrate Virginia and connect down to Thornton's Shelton. This one basically goes through the heart of the current environmental easements that the city is actually particularly interested in preserving. So, and then finally with option 5, this assumes that the improvements are going to be made to Green Bank. And that there's going to be no real mechanism for Celebrate Virginia to be feeding into the Western network. So it's assuming all traffic has to kind of come down or mostly come down Green Bank, as that would be the preferred kind of route coming down and across. So And it's kind of hooking around to avoid some of the easements as well.
I don't know, any of those connections to Green Bank are gonna wipe out at least 50 houses. I can't support any of that.
So
That's actually not true. I've gone out there and taken photographs, so there's only one house that is close to the road. You're only adding a lane on the.
I don't know, when you start taking away drain fields and well, and
This is assuming a 4-lane facility, right?
Better be.
Yeah, I'll just make sure because oh, okay. Well, Ian said adding a lane, but you mean adding a lane in each direction. Okay.
and it's also got the main water line for the Rocky Pen Reservoir underneath the
That you just built.
road, yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's not my
this
fault.
level of study,
Can be done.
Right.
this level of study has not gone into that level of detail on like taking actual surveys. Again, this is a modeling exercise to see how it's going to distribute and be effective if we build it. What those processes come kind
What
of later.
exactly is our action item this evening on this? I mean, are we pushing this forward to the policy committee to study this more in depthly? Is that what we're doing?
So, currently the,
They've already studied.
yeah. Sorry, I'm right here. So currently the policy committee is going to open public comment up as of May 15th. You're getting the first draft of the report. You can either endorse that they open public comment as well. You can decide that you want to have a discussion to send any other get to advise the policy committee coming up is that if there's any items or anything else, you can make that recommendation to the policy committee.
So we're looking at saying to the policy committee, we're okay with, in general, this study, not a specific option.
Yeah.
Not, recognizing that there are faults in each option, but like, hey, look, we need something less
The
than.
decision coming kind of up in front of the policy committee in addition is also the question if it wants to fund the next level of the study. So getting into those impacts and then identifying the.
What's it gonna cost to buy the right of way?
Yeah, that's where it's
How
gonna
big
start.
how big a hurdle is the environmental gonna be? Blah, 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 blah.
Probably it's gonna be in.
Precisely, you
Yeah.
are exactly right.
Okay, all right. I was gonna say, go back to that slide where you had the traffic, accident on the 4th of April. I was gonna stop there and say, is this premature? But I never want to say the word premature in this room because nothing's premature enough, as far as I'm concerned. We should have been talking about stuff 30 years ago, okay? Without 95 northbound being completely opened, I mean, that is creating the havoc that we have right now. Correct? The construction. I had heard years ago, 10 years ago, that when they studied those two bridges, southbound, if they spent the money, went from a F to a C. Northbound would go from an F to an F. Okay, on a scale of A to F, even if we built it. When we open that thing, is it gonna work? I guess is my first question.
So.
Or is
in
it
the
still gonna be
model-
an F,
Which one?
northbound?
Is the current VDOT bridge that's being constructed on the northbound side of I-95 gonna work? Is that your question?
Well, yeah, I mean, 10 years ago, before we even started about doing it, they said, if we build the 3 lanes southbound, it will take the level of service from an F to a C. Prove it. Northbound's gonna go from an F to an F, so why do we spend the money? But we're spending the money anyway.
So I'd say two things. First one is when I shut up, you've got VDOT sitting behind you, so I'm sure they like to comment. But my comment would be, very quick story. I come from Johannesburg in South Africa. It's a city of 7 million people. And we have a beltway, a circle. We used to call it the concrete highway when it was young. It's a circle of highways like you have around DC, like the beltway. And it got congested.
So we spent a lot of money and added another lane. And then we discovered 8 years later, we had as much traffic now in all of the lanes as we had in the 2 lanes we had before that. And that pattern continues. So every time we add a lane, it gives us 8 to 10 years, and then those lanes are full. So your question, I have to answer in a little bit of a cheeky way. It's like, yes, it will work. Yes, it's going to reduce congestion
For a time frame.
for a period
Yeah.
of time.
I got you.
Then we will face the next.
Oh, there's no doubt. I understand that.
But VDOT is behind you, so I don't want to speak for them.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. We had unlimited funds. This is hypothetical. We had the unlimited funds. We were all Elon Musk's here and we could pay for it all. The best scenario would be another bridge plus public transit system.
No. Well, I'm not saying not public transit. Need 3 bridges. We don't need 6.
Okay.
If you said unlimited funds, I'll build you 8 2-lane bridges every like mile or less.
Well, my suggestion, we build all 4 of those options.
And so.
Won't that cost $1 billion?
Well, you had unlimited money, didn't you?
More like 2 or 3 billion.
So the thing is that you can play this as a game on the tabletop. If you have X amount of money, which is always what we have.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that money to fix the problem? And I somewhat sympathize with Rupert. You've got to get people to travel in different ways, not always the same old thing. So getting everybody on their own in a car on the freeway is not the solution, right? If all of us on the planet buy a Chevy and drive alone in our car to work every day, the planet will be in gridlock. We can't have that. So you've got to do a combination of things. So my opinion now this is not a fact, this is my opinion. My opinion is we can't continue to add 50 lanes onto the I-95 over the next 100 years, right? We can't just keep adding a lane, because all you do is make it worse. You bring more people there. A far better idea is to develop a multitude of different things simultaneously. First thing is you need a grid, right? So this bridge aims at adding to the grid, and we probably will need another bridge a bit further out, right? As the urban area grows, and we convince Spotsylvania and Stafford to work together with the city to do that, right? Which takes a lot of political capital. And in the background, Rupert's idea works when we have the other options. So what you also need is a better transit system. You need a bus every 15 minutes, not every hour. Because if you have the bus every 15 minutes, if you have the grid, if you have the trains and more rail capacity, because we've run out of rail capacity, then you can do those congestion pricing things, because you can then encourage people to take the better options. You can't put the tax before you have the options. So in the ideal world, you need, I would say, 2 more bridges west of I-95, plus a better transit system, all working in concert. Otherwise, what happens is, if you just do congestion pricing without the options, it's just a tax. If you don't build the transit, you encourage everybody to buy another Chevy and another Chevy and another Chevy, and it's a never-ending problem. So you have to have a network. And there's a little thing that's creeping up in the background, which we're not talking about, which is that young people are not getting driver's licenses. So they've got to have a way to move around, because they're not going to buy a car. Millennials, they're not buying cars as much as the rest of us do. So they have to have an option.
As a millennial, I'd say that they're not the young people anymore.
Millennial and I have more gray hair than you.
We're not the young people anymore. So my point in asking that question, however, I did have a point. We don't live in the ideal world, obviously. We have, I mean, who knows if we even have the money to get one of these done, right? But let's say that we do manage to get one of these bridges built. How do we choose which is the best option to set us on the path towards the ideal world?
I'll get to that in a second. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna show you.
Okay.
6th grade, my history teacher told me Geography influences history. Okay?
As a history teacher, I agree.
The Rappahannock River kept the Union forces at bay for 4 years. Okay? It's an impediment that was a problem then, it's a problem now. It's a problem for us trying to cross it, right? Our problem in Fredericksburg, as Fredericksburg people, is we are trying to coexist with the East Coast superhighway of I-95, okay? It's a double-edged sword. It's brought us good times. It also brings us everybody else all the time, every day, all day, all night, okay? Now, you can use that to your advantage or you can use it to our detriment. Right now, it's our detriment. I-95, every time I cross Route 1 at Massaponax, that thing is a parking lot. Every day, every day. And what it does is it forces, and maybe what we do, get one of these smart IT guys to change the algorithms in Garmin and Apple Maps to keep them on the interstate instead of putting them on our local roads. Because what happens is Route 1 gets backed up, Route 2 gets backed up, Cool Springs Road, all that gets backed up. There's no options. There's no options. We're all trying to funnel everything through the same hole. Back to 301.
This is what I wanted Rupert here for, because I was going to bring that up.
The Harry Nice Bridge,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, we got a Republican governor in Maryland and he got it done. Finally, after the Harry Nice Bridge was about ready to fall down. Okay, the old one. I know the guys that used to go inspect the pylons. He said you could put your arm underneath them in the scuba gear. Okay, it was built in 1940. The thing is, you're lucky it didn't fall down. Okay, so we got a 4-lane bridge across the Potomac now. Does anybody run any traffic numbers on it since it's opened up?
That's what I wanted to ask was.
I bet it's increased.
Is modeling now taking into account the 4-lane Harry Nice Bridge? And has, right, and I figured that was a
taking
yes.
into account if the local lanes are currently functioning in its model. In fact, it's even taking away up if Gateway Boulevard has the full extension as well.
And that's what I was also wondering, has there been any noticeable change with the 4-lane Harry Nice Bridge being in the model with any of our I-95 traffic?
Well, what I'm saying with 301 is we need to get the Federal Highway Administration involved in that one, and they need to start talking about Interstate 97 along the 301 corridor. Okay, you need to take some of the traffic that does not need to go to DC and get them the heck on away from it and put them up there. I mean, it'll take you to 97 comes down to Annapolis out of Baltimore. If they don't want to go to Baltimore, they could shoot them across Bay Bridge, which probably needs to be rebuilt too, and take them up through farmland of Delaware to Wilmington. I mean, somebody needs to be thinking ahead like that because we can't all go through Fredericksburg and DC all the time. And then,
Can we handle that at the local level
huh?
or at the state level? I mean,
That's outside of the MPO, so.
I don't know. That's my suggestion. I want an interstate up 301. That's what I want. Who does that?
Getting a
Who
little
says?
far extreme.
But I'm getting back to that. 95 is our problem. But back when they did the study for what I was just talking about with the F to C and F to F deal, when they did the traffic study for those two bridges on 995, it shocked them how much local traffic was using the interstate. That's because none of us want to sit at the Falmouth Light or the Chatham Bridge or go across the Bridge of Nowhere, which they don't call it that anymore, Blueberry Parkway.
But
We called it Bridge of Nowhere.
But the 2013 study you're referring to also recommended river crossing. The I-95 bridges were phase 1.
Right.
River crossing was phase
That's
2.
correct. So let's get back to this one. Well, I want to talk about truck traffic. This would do nothing to alleviate truck traffic.
Yes, it would.
No, not at all. And I drive a truck. Okay.
Yes, it would.
Let me tell you why. No one in a truck is going to come down there and sit at 14 stoplights going through Central Park when they can go to the
That's
interstate.
exactly what we want.
You want?
Yeah.
Are you crazy?
Yeah, because you're gonna have local traffic crossing.
What John is saying is right. Maybe it's not incredible.
Okay.
But it's fine.
So what it's going to do is it's going to start removing the local trips that are accessing the shopping centers,
Oh,
the destinations.
Well,
On
I was gonna
17
say, I was gonna
through
caveat by
95,
saying the local
that
trucks would go
It's
down.
going to incentivize that the trucks stay on the higher capacity routes, depending on where you put the bridge, because the location matters in that. And that one of these options does pull
I saw the numbers.
or encourages trucks to stay on 95. We actually see a truck increase. Now, part of that is latent demand happening. And this model is very simplistic on the truck. So anything over in a class 4 vehicle is a truck.
So you
So-
want to take trucks off the interstate?
No.
Okay,
Opposite.
okay. All right.
One of the model run does remove trucks from the interstate. Another one's and two other ones are kind of agnostic to it.
Which one was it? Two?
Two keeps trucks on 17 and 95. Option 5 starts pulling them off.
17.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Hang on, the big point though you're missing because you're getting into the weeds. The big point is this. You're gonna free up capacity on I-95 if us local people use this bridge.
I understand.
That's the
I
big.
understand that.
And then you start having because I've been the fleet manager who says, I don't care what the congestion is, you stay on it because I don't want you finding the back roads and getting yourself in trouble.
Again, geography influences history. Our problem with truck traffic is that truck traffic from the northeast does not come down 95. They come down 81. And then to get to 95, they come down 17.
Not completely true. We have more trucks on 95 than we have on 81. 81 has more tonnage. We have more trucks.
Where are you counting them at?
That actually happens just
Because-
south of Quantico.
Because they're coming
have
from
the-
Winchester to here.
We have the single greatest section, truck count, just pure truck count,
The entire state of
in this entire state, more than anywhere in DC because they get distributed, and more than anywhere in Hampton Roads because they get distributed. But all of a sudden, because where we are in the greater Commonwealth area, they all start getting concentrated just north of Route 17 going to DC because it's not just trucks going through our region. We don't have a Harris Teeter, but we're the Harris Teeter distribution for all of Virginia, DC, Maryland, and Delaware. I think even Virginia, based on our discussions with it. We are actually starting to generate trucks moving north, but they have to get through our bottleneck first.
And the thing is, we really have two bottlenecks because it's not just the Rappahannock River. Quantico in itself acts like a river
Quantico,
because you've only got the one corridor that you can go through. So it's a river in itself.
The Potomac on the other side, so
All right,
This is always traffic here at Aquafine. Always.
because you're going from 4 to 3 lanes. And you have to merge.
Well, they're adding a lane now. to
And also there's the river and everywhere where there's a river, remember that table John did in the beginning, everywhere with the river? You have to build bridges across and they cost a damn lot of money. And so people build a few, not many. And there's not that many bridges over the Occoquan. There's not that many bridges over the Rappahannock. So it all congregates on US 1 and I-95. And US 1 is slow because of all the traffic lights. So they all go on I-95.
When I first walked in here as a Spotsylvania rep, I'm against this bridge, okay? Because it doesn't connect anything to Spotsylvania. But
Oh, it does.
I'm a regional guy. I think we need it. All right, let's go back to the options.
Can I get through
Matt,
some of the?
sure.
This is Glenn. I've got a question. In our discussion, are we discussing local traffic from A to B, or are we discussing regional traffic up and down the 95 and the 301 corridor?
So this river crossing option is focusing on local traffic, but it's not like we're kind of completely operating in a bubble where we're ignoring that there is regional traffic.
Yeah, taking local traffic off of 95 affects the regional traffic.
Okay, so the reason I asked that question, and thinking out of the box here, have we considered things like, and I'm kind of out of the box here, sky lifts, air taxis, trolleys, and light rails? Any one of those four? Again, sky lift, like a.
Everybody
I'm
remember
sorry?
the gondola?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Back in the day, I want to say like 20 years ago, they were going to build a gondola.
When Celebrate was
from
rezoned.
Celebrate
Yeah.
to Celebrate, yeah.
So this is Ian, the FAMPO administrator. We did last year model what would happen if we had a light rail system.
Right.
The unfortunate problem with it is that we don't have the ridership. We don't have population dense enough and big enough to
put enough riders on the light rail system to make it worth the effort of spending the money.
Okay,
So-
are we talking light rail or heavy rail?
Like,
Light rail,
Okay,
because
okay.
people live too far, they're spread out in single family homes on large plots of land all over the place. You
Okay.
have to have much higher density to make light rail effective. Otherwise, we're going to pay for light rail trains or trams that are going to have 4 people on the tram. And that's really expensive.
there's
Okay.
only 2 places.
What
to
about,
get
what about trolleys, trolley cars?
Next door.
Well, I do want to ask that too. Was it possible or is it possible to model in, because if you're going to be adding new local lanes on this bridge, you know, we're already talking about a BRT system down from the mall to Cowan Boulevard downtown. We've now shown that there's a lot of demand to get from west of 95 in Stafford to west of 95 in Fredericksburg. If a BRT system would be, you know, feasible for that corridor.
What bridge would you use to cross between the two?
Well, this bridge,
in West Mall.
this new bridge,
And what is a VRT?
a bus rapid transit.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Uh,
Is that similar? Excuse me for not knowing this, but is that similar to? Is that similar to like trolley cars?
It's a bus, but it's a bus that typically will have a dedicated lane so that it can whiz past the cars if you build the
Understood.
full BRT.
Okay, I
However,
understand. I have a visual. Okay.
Yeah, the Pulse system in Richmond is a BRT.
Got it.
You know, the
Okay.
bus in Richmond, that's what it is. So, you know, I started out trying to get more transit in the region, you know, and everybody argued me down like I was standing on a cliff about to jump. So I've had to modify my expectations in the region. And the reason that I have to modify my expectations in the region is that all of these big transit solutions, you have to have a big population who wants to ride them. Otherwise, they all collapse because you spend a lot of money and then no one gets on. And you need transit-oriented development. You need the density. So you need everybody to live in a small space, not everybody to live in a big, wide space, because otherwise the cost per unit is just prohibitive. So,
Well, if we,
We're
I've got a
starting with-
question. I've still got some comments here. So I understand what you're saying, but there's still a reality that we still have a problem that we have to solve. So if we continue coming to the table, this is just my little opinion here. If we continue coming to the table and we still have excuses on why we can't do something, then we're kind of always going to be back at square one again.
we are doing something. We have designed a high-capacity bus transit route. It's the first one in the region. It's the first one that's ever managed to get the policy committee to vote yes.
Okay.
So that's a big win for us. Jamie Jackson at the FXB Go, Fred Transit, is now taking that to the next phase to get into some design elements
Okay.
and ask for funding. And in your pack tonight is a proposal for CMAC and STGB funding. That's cash that we're putting towards studies. One of those is to design the detail of this rapid bus route, and hopefully then they'll be able to use federal funding to build it and to operate it. So we are doing something, and that's the first step. That's the best I could get away with under the circumstances, and it's the first one. If it succeeds and people ride it, we can get the money and build more of them. So
Got
this is the first one. Let's see
Okay.
if it works.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I do want to point out that the VRE subsidy per person this year is about $3,100 per person, and it comes out of the local gas tax. So it's currently about 0.5% of people that live in Stafford ride the VRE, but the VRE subsidy is taking up about 70% of the gas tax revenue.
We've taken a few tangents, and I know that I've taken a few tangents myself.
I'm
So
gonna-
John,
I'm gonna go
why don't we
quickly.
finish this, and then if we have anything else after the end of John's presentation.
Very quickly, this might be the biggest concentration of environmental easements in our area other than a section of northern Caroline County.
Mhm.
it is going to be a very difficult because you don't just have one easement holder, you don't have two, you got several, and they in some cases they overlap. In some cases, ones that overlap say different things, will permit different things. The easement that the city of Fredericksburg holds through the Virginia Outdoor Foundation does allow for a river crossing. The one that is held by the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust, that was also working in partnership with what is basically the Silver Foundation or the Silver Corporation, does not. And that the Silver Corporation, through how it's divided various bits of property, has fragmented much of their easements. And in some cases where it looks like you have a section there on the right at the very bottom, you have easements that we believe are about a yard wide that actually connect everything. But until we do a proper survey, we don't actually know. So there is a lot of environmental unknowns in this area that are basically going to probably development when they look at the alternatives if they go to the next stage. But this is going to be a major driver. Both Stafford and particularly the city of Fredericksburg said we need to look at this in all of our options. We looked at development impact, and because one of the questions was it just did not want to spur additional unnecessarily growth. Both this area that the river crossings are being explored are either been developed or are already in immediate development processes. So they are either, the Silver Corporation has things that they've released recently of their ideas of what they want to do to their property. But for the most part, this is taking place in a predominantly a developed area as compared to an outer connector that goes out, towards Culpeper. So we looked at that. So the models suggest something very interesting here. So these are looking at the big picture items. Generally speaking, the slip lane does very little. It removes a little bit of traffic off of the exit 130 and moves it to just a slightly different exit, slightly north. The biggest benefit, surprisingly, that gets into is Bragg Road. We don't know why, but that's an interesting thing. But for the most part, it's inert within our model. On the other hand, every single bridge option shows a benefit. And when we also take this into consideration with the east-west study, we see congestion decreases region-wide by about 1.5%. That's pretty significant. And when we get into 2050, that slowly migrates and creeps up to 6-7%. So over time, as the region gets more congested, kind of the return on value increases from a congestion point of view. We've seen that for the most part, you can kind of see it. It's across the board a fairly level, significant decrease. However, when we start looking at the local roads, if we just say, let's ignore all benefits to 95, you start seeing a little bit bigger shift. Whereas the western route was more efficient or wasn't in last place in total volume, it's actually now in last place. You see Central Ridge does a little bit better. And the eastern option does a little bit better with the Long Bridge kind of in between those two. So you see a slight change of, okay, who's benefiting from these use? So if we just ignore the benefits to 95, you see a couple of different other options start taking place.
So you're saying that the traffic models here showing reduce
The number
miles by about 300,000 per day if one of these bridges are built. And I estimated that about the bridge would save about 3 miles of driving per for 25,000 cars. So that would be 75,000 miles was my estimate. But this is showing about 300,000 miles reduced driving. That's very significant and in reducing congestion and reducing air pollution.
And the other side, and this is where I'm kind of pulling from the east-west, you see a greater reduction, particularly in the travel of extremely congested reduction.
When an incident happens on I-95, you're going to reduce congestion by 11% if you build a bridge. If you don't build a bridge, the congestion will be 11% worse in the region if there's a crash on I-95.
Since I have school teachers,
that's an important number.
If you know the difference between week before school starts and the week after school starts,
Yeah,
that's that impact right there.
yeah.
That is how it would.
That is a huge difference.
So we see that it actually, the earlier we build it, the bigger benefit we have as it moves forward. When we look at all day volume to capacity, VC is volume capacity, so how much volume on it, we see that as a whole, all of the options except for the slip lane. The slip lane actually slightly increases traffic, an absolute minute amount, very small, but it increases congestion. If you look at the other options, options 3 and option 5 provide the biggest overall benefit. But it's kind of skewed because we're looking at all day congestion. When we start looking at when folks are actually out and about, AM and peak times, it shifts. And we kind of noticed this in some of our model runs, and we had to dig a little bit deeper here because we're like, that doesn't make sense because we know that volume 2 is decreasing BMTs kind of less than some other ones. So what's going on here? What we see is that it's all dependent on when folks are making trips. Option 2 reduces morning commute and PM commute the most, and then overnight some. Options 3 and option 5 are getting their congestion reduction in the evenings, after 6 p.m. and before 5 a.m., the overnight. So they're getting their big benefits at a very different time. And then at the midday, you have option 2 doing something very weird. As you can see, it's not moving the needle midday. That is suggesting that it's the folks who are doing midday shopping. It's actually supporting and encouraging trips at that point in time. So the benefit isn't happening. But when you get into the commute times, it starts showing a lot more because it becomes an alternate route.
So go back a little bit. So it almost seems like option 4 is to split the difference.
Option 4 splits the difference. Yes.
But option 4 is the one with the biggest environmental problems.
Potential environmental problems with that further enough. Yes. Yeah. The survey says we got issues.
Potential at this point.
Yeah. So getting back into the truck. So this is where kind of where the model I would say is both a little bit of a shortcoming and also very useful. Anything that's more than a light duty pickup truck is considered a truck in this model, which is good because it kind of also lets us know how many Amazon trucks, school buses, everything else. It's kind of bad if you ask me, okay, how many of the 53-footer, commercial truck are going for that way? Yes. But we kind of still understand, because we still need to understand how many times is Amazon coming through? How much is a plumber's truck?
But if I-95 shuts down, you might.
Yeah, I know.
Huh?
We are aware of that. So we looked a further option into it. And this is where I'm getting into where the model starts showing a little bit differences. Slip lane increases traffic, a little bit of truck traffic on Route 1 for whatever reason. Guesses that they have to go somewhere. Option 2 shows that it's really not doing a whole lot, but it does a little bit of positive benefits on a lot of the other roads. As in, it pulls a little bit of truck traffic off Route 1, pulls a little bit of truck traffic off Route 3, pulls a little bit off of Route Warrenton Road. That's the inverted C movement of folks trying to go across the river. So it's pulling non-interstate truck traffic, with trucks being a very wide common, from making that movement. It pulls it off of that. And if you look how it's actually increasing the number of trucks on 95, it's actually encouraging trucks to stay on 95 because you're pulling traffic off of those other routes. So you're reducing the amount of, when everything goes wrong, them trying to find other ways. Option 3 is also doing something very similar, although it's loading Trustlow Road a little bit more. We don't know exactly why, and actually all 3 of the Western options show a higher increase in Trustlow. For whatever reason.
Because you have people going north-south who go down Trustlow
To Route 1.
Yeah.
to Route 1, but they're going to do that more if there's a western option, because then it's a more direct route.
Well, if you push Mine Road to Plantation Drive,
Yeah.
that takes that problem out.
And that's what the model is quietly assuming
Okay.
too. It doesn't make the full
Okay.
network, but it's
Okay.
assuming it connects up to Plantation. Option 4 is slowly starting to take trucks off of I-95 at the bottom. And you can see it's starting to load them onto a couple others. So Warrenton Road actually sees a truck increase. And then option 5, you can see a heavy redistribution, particularly on Bald Hill Avenue, as well as Trustwell Road. Green Bank Road, it goes from being completely unused to being used, so you're seeing
Gordon
that.
Road, why is it putting it on Gordon Road?
Because it's over by there, isn't it?
Yeah, if you're trying to connect through Spotsylvania, I want to make sure it's Gordon Road. Yeah. If you're trying to connect through Spotsylvania and avoid the entire 95 corridor, option 5 becomes a lot more appealing. It becomes almost a 95 alternative.
Well, that's when you need the outer connector bridge further out. That's what you need over there.
We start seeing this general trend that the further west you build the bridge, the more you're actually doing things to benefit pulling traffic off 95.
Right.
So in these models, what's more important? The position of the bridge as it crosses the river, or the way it interacts along the corridor of the option?
Quietly, it's a little bit of both, but I would say based because of kind of option 3 splits the difference in some cases. It actually has the same options as option 4 and 5, but because it's further east, I'm starting to believe that it actually is. The further east you keep it, the more it remains a local road versus the further west you put it, slowly grabs that regional through road.
That makes sense. So this line, this line over here is moving from red to pink to light blue to dark blue.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
And each one is going further away from I-95.
Yeah.
So the further you get away from I-95, the more you're pulling trucks off of I-95. The closer you get to I-95, they're like, oh no, let's just ride on I-95.
Right.
So you actually don't want to get too far away with this first bridge, because then you're going to start pulling truck traffic in residential neighborhoods. That's what this is telling you. So that you don't really want to build too far from the I-95, because then it's a mini outer connector, and then you've got to plan for trucks. Unless you ban them and put
Which, that brings up cost too, right? Having a bridge, I mean, if you build a bridge, let's say we go with option 5, which is taking the most trucks off of 95. Does that change the actual cost of the bridge outside of distance and all the other factors that are different from, say, option 2? The fact that you'd be planning for more trucks on option 5 than option 2, does that also affect the cost?
It's a great deal. It affects the air quality, and it might affect the maintenance cost of the bridge, because maintenance is often related to weight.
So that'd be a long-term cost then.
The long-term maintenance will go up if you have more trucks on.
What if we built a Salem Church Dam and run the road across it? Huh?
Anyway, Chairman,
Yeah, all four.
worried about the time and whether you're going to actually get through all of these presentations. We're only on
Yeah, okay.
6.
All right. That's good question. We see kind of a similar pattern occurring even in our volume to capacity, that you see as you move further west, you create bigger changes in how the network's operating. You're shifting more and more traffic kind of in different ways. You're inducing a little bit more traffic and pulling more traffic that would have probably stayed on 1795, that area further and further onto the other roads. So you start seeing other things like Bragg Road, Carl D. Silver Parkway start showing more and more heavier changes in the volume capacity road. So again, getting back to it, the average option 1 does little. It helps Bragg Road for some reason. We don't know why, but it kind of shows if you build a slip lane, it relieves something on Bragg Road, probably as a alternative of folks coming from another destination. It just shortens that route. Route 2, you're seeing that as it's feeding in, you see the roads showing more traffic, but as a whole, it's not really throwing a lot of new traffic onto roads that were previously kind of in that network. You can see kind of it's a mild benefit across a wide range with the hospital area and Carl D. Silver and Warrington Road, Route 17, and Trustload. You're seeing folks not making that C. We don't see as much benefit on Route 1 because we think that there's induced demand that's currently being suppressed by the traffic issues. And so adding this option, it kind of springs back up. But you see folks aren't cutting through.
All this blue here is all benefit to US 17 and Warrington Road.
That's a massive benefit. All that blue, a little bit of blue here, the blue here around the hospital, people trying to get to the hospital, the off ramps here, you can see all that blue. Everywhere you see blue, that is a massive benefit in terms of congestion, where you're improving the ability of people to move around.
But wouldn't it reduce traffic from Bragg Road, on Route 3 to, Route 1, wouldn't it?
We'll show you the Route 3 analysis. There's a slide on it.
I think that section of Route 3 reduces traffic.
Option 3, you start seeing a greater redistribution. You see Banks Ford Parkway, Green Bank Road starting because it's now sharing a bit more of the congestion. You're seeing Bragg Road slowly becoming more congested because it slowly becomes, as you move west, going across the bridge to Bragg, out to Gordon and south becomes a bit more, and we can talk about that. But you're saying you see bigger gains in some of the other areas, but you also see bigger impacts on others.
I just want to ask, like, it was noticed that option 3 and option 5 are incredibly wonky, where it comes down, does a big swing out to the west to get to Green Bank, and then comes back in. Like, that was acknowledged, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the easements
Okay.
affecting that. Option 4, you're seeing the same kind of behavior between options 3, 4, and 5. As you move in, it becomes more pronounced. You start seeing other roads, I think in this case, Bragg Road, showing more congestion. But you're still seeing a benefit in that C motion, as well as you're actually seeing, this is where you start seeing more improvements to 95. You can see that on-ramp coming up is showing an improvement. And so leading with option 5, you can see that it's the most redistribution. You see a few of the other routes kind of working through Central Park becomes a little bit more congested as a result. And you still see big benefits on Route 17 and through the hospital, but it's becoming more of big gains here, big losses there, or more congestion there. And you see that as the continuous trend. Route 3 impacts. And so this is where Route 3, and I actually say, even Celebrate Virginia Parkway and a couple other ones, it really, Fall Hill would actually fall into this. It really depends on which route and where it lands and what segment you want to count. So Route 3 in our model is, as a whole, basically agnostic. I think it's either like 1/100th of a tenth improvement or 110th increase in traffic, but it depends. You have huge amounts of congestion reduction east of Bragg Road. And then you have a fair amount or potential amount of congestion west of Bragg Road up until Salem Church Road, and then it completely falls off again. And this is kind of Spotsylvania's bottleneck because it has a large amount of roads all convening, and you have one section of Route 3 before you get to everything else. And so we can kind of see this. As a net, you get a benefit to Route 3, but it depends on Route 3 that's important to you.
So there's the first line. This is all good news, right? For that first part of Route 3. This is bad news, and then there's not much news at all. The question you asked about the benefit to Spotsylvania, the only reason this is showing all these extra trips is because we're now giving an option for Spotsylvania people to get to Stafford without going on I-95. So they're going to do that, right? And because they're going to do that, yeah, they are doing it. There's the cars on.
No offense, but what do I want to go up there for? No, I'm just kidding. I gotta go back to your option 5. I'm thinking on the parallel roads to I-95. So Stafford, you got Route 1 to the east, and you're working on Mine Road to the west. Okay, in Spotsylvania, we have Route 1 to the east for a ways. We have nothing on the west because the Mall Road got pushed around.
Salem Church and Levels is like the best you can do.
Darn right.
West Road.
If you would project that thing straight down, that's Salem Church Road.
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
Oh, you got it. Yeah, right there. I mean, that would push you Salem Church levels to Smith City. I mean, you could go almost all the way to Thornburg, really. eventually. On the west side of 95.
I finally get all those houses and businesses, right?
I mean, it's still pretty rural down there, so it's kind of empty, but, yeah, well, levels between 208 and Spotsylvania Parkway, that's a different story. And that does need improvement, but. No more.
The Mall Road, if it was extended, it could go down to,
Well, my
first
thought was
17.
to take 5 and connect it into Bragg Road, and then Bragg to behind the mall to Mall Road to Rolling Road, South Point. When it dumps you out on Route 1, everything's west of the interstate. But Salem Church, man, Salem Church and Levels is already in good shape. And then you could tie into that or tie River Road in there or tie it to Celebrate, but that would certainly give you a little mini western outer connector and give you your parallels to I-95 all at the same time.
But then don't you run the risk of taking truck traffic off of 95? If you have like a full mini,
You might,
that's what you were saying.
I mean, if you make it like a parkway type of thing with enough stoplights, I mean, the big guys are gonna go to the interstate.
I know that this is going to be something that's going to get brought up a lot. So where is the proper point in the discussion moving forward where people could start saying, I've got a line I want to suggest?
So the answer to that is that if the policy committee decides they want to do the next phase of this study, a new study, we have to give it a new name because to get it, it's
Right.
But anyway, we're going to do a new study, which has got to look at the environmental impacts and it's got to do alternatives analysis for NEPA. And they have to have a public meeting where they talk about the options that they're going to be investigating, the consultants that will get at them. So if policy committee decides they want to take it to the next step, that consultant will need to have a public meeting to hear from the public if the options they are investigating are sufficient.
So that might be the most proper time for us to start saying,
Yeah.
well, if someone has, it's going to happen. Everyone's going to have ideas about new lines, or I don't like this line, or adjust this line. So maybe for this, just in terms of getting past this particular item right here, we just make our determination if we feel that the policy committee should move forward, we do that action item, and then we take the discussion of what if we do this or that, and then slide that. Is that so for folks?
Is it all right if I make a motion?
Sure. Well, first of all, John, are you done?
It's only a question of.
This is the benefit to Spotsylvania, is that there's some, go back, stop on one of those maps. There's a way for people from Spotsylvania to do this and to get across the river, right? Whichever option we pick up here doesn't really matter. The point is you can go to Salem Church, go down Ring 3, go down Bragg Road, and get on any one of these options, and then you can get into Stafford.
Chunk of Route 3.
The other thing is this one of the slides, can you show the slide with the counts in, no, further south, further down? No, next, there, that there. See that number? We did the model counts for the traffic in summer and winter in the Spotsylvania town center. This is the weekend trips. This in the summer versus the weekend trips in the winter. See how this traffic to the Spotsylvania town center, mall, and all those other things drop off in the summer on the weekend?
It's vacation traffic.
Well, and
Nobody
in
wants
winter has Christmas.
This is traffic from Stafford,
The other ones, summer.
traffic from Stafford going to the Spotsylvania town center. It drops off on the weekend in the summer because they don't want to get on the I-95 because of everybody going to the beach. So the businesses are suffering in Spotsylvania in the summer on the weekend. We can tell by the traffic going there that they are not doing as well on the weekend in the summer.
Yeah.
Because people from Stafford have given up going there on the weekend.
So for the purposes of this meeting and of hopefully at some point getting to 6D, would it be, would everyone else be okay with a motion to endorse, and correct me if my wording's off here, endorse the policy committee
pursuing the next step in this with the understanding that there are alternative options that some people would like that will get considered at a later point.
I don't think that doesn't necessarily have to be in the motion, but we're just saying like,
Well, so that those of us voting understand that
yes, yes,
voting yes on this does not mean we're committed to those 5 options.
correct.
So in the next stage with the NEPA analysis, they will look at the no bill scenario, something that we didn't do. They will look at multiple options. They might look at multiple alternatives of very similar options. So it might be they have options 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and even one that we might not even think of. And then they might have 6 A, B, C, D. And you might actually have a lot of different that they refine it that much based on the conditions that they find through a much deeper analysis than what FAMPO can provide.
So really, all we're saying by voting yes today is, hey, it'd be nice to have something over the west side of the line.
It makes
Well,
sense.
It makes sense to
keep
study it.
pursuing, studying what is the
Listen.
best option.
You gotta push them or else they'll never talk about it.
No, I know. I'm, look, if I could vote on building the bridge tonight, I would vote yes.
Yeah.
All right.
But I'm not sure everyone else would.
Motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Is there anything else in the presentation that you need to do?
Y'all have basically seen it. We were wrapping up. I think you have the gist of it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have finished 6C.
Rupert left.
Do we want to talk about congestion pricing or?
6D, presentation of the allocation fiscal
Okay.
year 24-29.
Maybe you actually want to do a proper presentation on congestion pricing, what it does, where it works best, as a separate item, so you can bang that thing out on the head and say, this is what it is. This is where it works. If it doesn't work, this is how it works, and this is why you can or can't do.
Y'all want, I can always put on my professional
I was
hat.
making a joke.
No, I'm not.
Sorry.
But I mean, it's legitimate.
It's not that completely that you were making a joke.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
6D. 6D.
The facts.
10 seconds, 10 seconds off. If I was given this briefing, I'd start off by saying, imagine for a minute, there's no US one. That's what we got on the west side of I-95.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you got?
Yeah.
nothing.
Okay, just a reminder that FAMPO does other things other than river studies. We actually distribute a fair amount of funding to the regions for our localities and our partners, including like Fredericksburg Go, to pursue various projects. We have approximately almost $13 million to hand out in this current cycle. Part of that is for the addition of the carbon reduction funds that we are now receiving. It's about $200,000 a year, as well as we had some rollover CMAQ and STBG money that was, I think, the VRE station improvements that received a different pot of funds that we get those funds because you can't overfund it, so we get them back, and so we can roll them over. Our methodology requires that we split it out by mode in a very specific way. Due to us shifting money between each years, it doesn't quite become a perfect 65, 25, 15 split, but it comes pretty close. And that happens for both CMAQ and our dollar distributions. STBG funding part happens in the same way. You get about 10% for studies, 65% for roadways, about 10% for transit, and then 15% for active. And we split it out based on that, based on the projects available. There's a long methodology set aside. So back in November, the jurisdiction staff said, hey, you know what we've noticed? We don't have any studies in our queue for the next 4 or 5 years. That's going to be an issue. Staff are kind of started that discussion, and that they suggested if there's any additional funds, we were aware that some IIJA funds were coming available. We should maybe look at those put in. Since that, we learned that it was going to be the carbon reduction funds. It's about, $1.3 million. Fortunately, we can't use these for studies. However, we can do funding swaps, but we also had other cost increases happening. So it was let's use the carbon reduction in a funding swap to help pull some of the other money off, because you can only use carbon reduction funds on certain projects, swap those, pull some of that money, start plugging some of the holes for some of our cost overrun projects. And then once we have everything plugged up and for all, do a funding swap to make with STBG, which is a lot more flexible. It gives us a lot more ability to move and use funds in different ways because they are the super flexible type of funding, not tied to air quality or anything else. And so that's how we kind of manage this process. So we follow the methodology that's set out and defined by TAC and adopted by the policy committee. We did our set asides. We did our kind of our baselines. We funded existing projects first as per our methodology, and any cost overruns up to 10%. Then if it's over 10%, it needs policy committee actions. And then after that, we apply the new funding. So in this, as a result, based on kind of some discussion based on TAC, we're also rolling in, and this is kind of where it becomes an action item, that we are providing a fair amount of funding to studies in all of our jurisdictions. So for Spotsylvania, we're looking at providing funding for the Harrison Road I-95 interstate interchange option, for the Harrison Road widening option for a study, looking at the high capacity transit study, as well as increasing funding for the 610 multimodal study, as well as the river crossing next step also falls into this. So we've kind of
That's on the next slide, I think, just so that we can see the.
So yeah, thank you. I always jump ahead when I talk. So we provided the TAC a couple of options. Spotsylvania asked, hey, can we swap some funding around because we can't quite use the Harrison Road I-95 interchange funding quite as fast as you're giving us. So let's do a swap. And they added an I-95 widening PE funding and did a swap with their Route 1 South Point jug handle to make funds available. They're like, we like the amount of funding that you're giving us, but we can't use it quite in the same year. So we kind of accommodated their request. And then we also were able to bump up the high capacity transit study because it was initially funded in out years. So we're bringing that one forward. So we basically listened to our jurisdictions and said, hey, when do you actually need the money? This is where we can allocate it. We need to tell you when we're going to get it, and we can start swapping it around. TAC adopted option B with a little bit of a amendment to move a slight amount, another $100,000 just to cover some of their needs. So we followed the methodology in the funding swaps. We did apply we're not allowed to have like holdover money just sitting in our current year balance. We have to put it somewhere. And so we put it towards a cost increase. So that kind of goes above and beyond the 10%. And then we just constantly work through our methodology. And so we fund them in order of FAMPO requested planning studies. We did our 5% set aside. We put our federally required activity set asides in. That's for GW Right Connect as well. We funded the existing projects. We had to fix a accounting error in FY27, which allocated funds we didn't have. So we had to kind of move money around to fix that issue. We shifted money between the programs so that it would be flexible. And then we funded new projects by mode split. So it just follows that. And so although we had some 30-some projects compete in this, we can really only fund, depending on how the project's asked, usually about 2 projects, because we can never really fund if like Spotsylvania submits the Route 1 South Point intersection. It's a $31 million project. We have $13 million and only 65% can go to roadways. And then it says you can't get more than 50% of that allocation. So it becomes like 2.6 million.
I think can you go back to option A, option B slide?
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. Option A, Harrison 95 interchange study, $490,000. In option B, it's down in FY 28-29. I see the price is different. Why are we getting a discount there? Or is that?
Because in FY 28-29, this is the maximum amount of money that's available. So if it's swapping, I can't necessarily.
Oh, the 104 is the difference. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I got it.
Okay.
I'm done.
Good.
I'm done.
So we basically followed this and applied the funding to this list. If you've seen the list that previously, we're just saying this is what the TAC adopted. And if you choose to do so, if you want, you can also move to endorse that the option B that was in the agenda was the one that was preferred. So if you want to prove how we allocated the money, this is your chance to do so.
And that's the recommended resolution on the agenda.
Was option A.
It was option B was the one that was finally.
What is?
It does say,
Yeah, that's what it is. If you go to the UPWP, it's option B. That's where they are on the agenda.
When they're talking about I-95 widening, what are they talking about there?
They are looking to extend from 3 to 4 lanes from from the merge on down.
From exit 130 to exit
Okay.
126, they want to add a lane.
That makes sense. I can see that happening already. So, and then what's the orphan blue thing?
Orphan Blue is the exit 126. When it was in the development from Smart Scale in previous rounds, there is one little small segment from basically the northernmost part to Market Street that was kind of locked off the project and basically had to go back and find funding. And because of that, and the timetable is, in the call for projects FY 28-29, but Spotsylvania wants it no later than 27, we had to shift. That's where I'm like throwing money forwards and backwards for that one.
There's a lot of stuff.
the small
going on there.
segment
Yeah.
orphaned.
Yeah. So Orphan Blue is just because it was blue on the maps and
I've been involved in some of that. When we 6-lane Route 1, there's 1,000 feet that nobody accounted for. The county had to go back and do. Yeah.
so.
Okay, does anyone want to make a motion to recommend option B? Or you could do option A if you want to be bold, but does anybody want to do a motion for option B?
I'll make a motion for option B.
All right, motion for option B. Is there a second? Was there a second?
Could we just let it slide? Does it need a vote?
Well, it's an action item. I mean, I guess we don't have to make a recommendation, but
I'll second it.
all right, second for option B. Further discussion.
I agree with, we've done this in the past for those items. We just don't have really the knowledge. We haven't studied these issues deep enough where we could really say one is better than the other. I mean, the TAC can say that sort of thing, and the policy committee has to say that sort of thing, but we don't. So I will abstain when it comes to vote.
Okay. All right.
I think I'm going to abstain also.
Okay. Well, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. All those abstaining.
I'm also abstaining.
Three of us, yes,
Yeah.
three abstains?
Does that work on the majority deal?
I think that would be a failure of the motion if you don't have a majority member.
Yeah, okay.
in favor.
Majority fails
It'd
without.
be essentially like if you have a tie, a motion does not carry if there's no
Okay.
majority.
All right, that falls.
Do you have any actual voting members online, and have they voted yea or nay for abstention?
Anybody online?
Still Glenn,
Yes,
Larry.
yes, Glenn Goldsmith is here.
All right, what are did you all vote in this particular motion?
I thought we were told earlier that we weren't allowed to vote. I'm an at-large member.
Oh, yeah, hey, what's the at-large? Okay, that's right.
Did the mention?
Okay.
I've only been kind of
I'm voting aye.
Can you vote?
Who is it voting aye?
This is Glenn.
And you're the at-large, and you're at-large.
No, he's
No, Glenn's not at large. The
Oh,
other
it's not.
gentleman, Mr. Thomas, I believe he spoke.
Yes, Rodney Thomas is an at-large member, so I'm not allowed to vote.
I just want to get this straight. There's 2 yeses and everybody else is abstaining, correct?
Do abstentions count against the majority?
I don't think they do. That would have been because otherwise you would vote no.
My reference is the Speaker of the House vote this last year, and those did count.
I think that's because
But that's House rules.
the rules of the House of Representatives.
What are you asking at what count?
If abstentions count,
Like if the vote is 2 yeses and 5 abstentions, what is it? And then my initial thought is, well, that's a pass. If everybody else is just abstaining, but do the 2 votes make a quorum, does it have to meet a quorum of yes votes? Does that make sense?
This is, I'm sorry, this is Glenn again. I misheard. I'm actually abstaining from that vote. So I'm sorry. I'm having some connectivity issues here. So I'm sorry.
Now you only have one yes vote.
All right, let's call a division. Let's do a roll call vote just to clean this up. This is
Okay.
This is getting a little getting crazy. Let's just
Matt Rowe.
pass me to zero.
Matt Rowe.
Pass.
Brett Pierce.
Hey.
Okay. Okay. David McClung.
Abstain.
Nick Watnowski. Abstain. Joe.
Abstain.
Glenn Goldsmith
Glenn
abstained.
Goldsmith. And Tim Walsh.
Who say aye?
And I'll abstain. So it's one yes, one no,
Yeah.
all abstaining, everybody else is abstaining. Motion fails.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That was starting to get crazy. All right, so we'll move on to the next thing.
UPWP, this is a document, actually,
Abstain.
no, because the resolution is incorrect. This is agenda. Do you have the PWP, this is the issue with the item. So the Unify Planning Work Program is a document. Would you like to describe from the agenda? Just basically FAMPO's work plan for the next year.
All right,
And it's whether or not you want to recommend or endorse it.
let's strike from the agenda.
Strike it, okay. And finally, we have our draft FY 24, FY 27 TIP program. If you want to open public comments or take action on this document, you can. This is outlining all of the region's transportation projects for the next 4 years. So we had the draft made available online, and it is whether or not the TAC or the CTAC wishes to wade into making a recommendation to the policy committee or not.
I'm going to be honest, I did not go through every page of this, so I don't know if I would feel very confident making a recommendation one way or another, but I don't want to speak for anybody else.
It's currently out for public comment and it's not being voted on at this policy committee.
So this could be considered next month.
All right.
Okay,
Everybody's-
go to page 28. I have a question.
Of course.
Okay, I think that's, well, no, that isn't it. It must have been the other document.
It's a Fred Transit thing about bike racks.
Yeah, no. No, it must be the one we deleted.
Oh, that's the other one. Okay.
This is the UPWP probably.
Yeah.
It basically outlines what and where our funding is going to go to within the region. The projects that are selected that they have to be funded. It's not a wish list. This is where we allocate resources.
I see. Not only from 24 to 27.
It's already our money, it's BDOT's money, Red Transit's money, BRE money in the region.
It's anything that's receiving federal funds or considered to be regionally
Spent in our region has to be put in so otherwise they may not spend the money.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to move on from this agenda item.
Look at the next month.
Yeah, I'm going to table this until next month.
All right. Staff reports for TAC and Policy Committee. May I suggest if we can make these concise if possible?
You basically just had the same stuff that we had for the last month. The T almost.
8A, VDOT reporter problem issues and progress update. Did anybody do any VDOT reporter problems this past month?
I have a question. There's a lot of signs on a lot of little bridges that say emergency vehicle weight 32, emergency vehicles weight 32 ton, weight capacity 32 tons. And it reads, kind of confuses me. Are they talking about fire trucks? Or is it an emergency?
Oh.
This is the bridge on the weight limit. You understand what I'm saying? It reads like the fire trucks are only supposed to be 32 tons.
So they're prohibiting anything over this weight limit?
That's what I called a fellow at VDOT. That's what he said it was for. So well, maybe emergency should be in red. Okay. And the rest of it be limit.
Emergency,
32 tons.
colon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reads like fire truck should
Yeah.
be reading it. And I'm thinking, I don't think any of them are over 32 tons, but, and it's really scary that they can't go across the bridge to go put a fire out too. But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
I'm sure the truckers are just rolling through it because they don't.
Yeah. Did you check with Kyle and the residency? Is there residency engineer?
I talked to another fellow over there, but, yeah,
Works with Rick and Andrew.
okay.
That would be the right area.
Resident engineer. Kyle.
How big?
How are we doing on business route signage?
I did not get any follow-up email from the last meeting about specific things that you wanted me to check on.
Oh, you need like here, 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 and here. Okay. All right.
Just, as everybody's doing their job, where I say 100 things, we have time for 10 a day.
Sure.
So it helps to be prompted with these locations for where there are concerns for signage.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
Gotcha.
again, I will pass that on. I'll wait for residents here.
All right.
How about the Route 2 widening project? Who should I speak to about that?
Please, Stephen Haynes, my boss.
Stephen Haynes?
Yeah, but I can take back a message.
Yeah. Oh, I'd like to look at what they're thinking there. I got some ideas. They might be able to do away with the traffic light.
And then our traffic engineer, Peter Hedrick, and he does all the signal warrants and all that, so. I mean, you're always welcome just to send me an email, linda.lasud@virginia. But, and then I can always route it so that you're not an octopus with 10, tentacles everywhere.
Okay.
I'm coordinating.
Anybody else? If not, we'll move on to member reports. Does anybody have a member report, topic of interest, informational? Hearing none, we'll move on to final public comment. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. Go ahead.
Everybody. Hello, my name is Christina Starber. I'm a resident of the homeowner. I'm spending my evening here with all of you because my home and my community is particularly impacted by option 2. So I want to thank all, before I say, I just want to thank all of you personally. I want to thank all of you for what you do for our community. I know that there's a lot still to determine. These are early days. I'm still learning about that.
For people listening, they might have a hard time hearing from
Can you hear me on the line? Okay. Hello?
All right.
I'll try to speak louder.
Okay.
But I just wanted to publicly voice my concern and opposition to the river crossing. I say this not only as a homeowner that would be potentially severely impacted by, but also just a citizen of this community, values the environment, our wildlife, our quality of life. I bought my home not based on where Wegmans is or where other big box stores are. Sorry, Mr. Olive, I had to bring that up. You mentioned Wegmans last night. But really around the nature around us and the community that values that. I appreciate that about it. I and some other members of my community, we really do not support any actions that members of our community that devalue their homes or reduce their quality of life, such as their. We have members in our community that are veterans, elderly couples, young families. We also have people who have perhaps multiple properties, depending on those properties for their livelihoods. They would lose that potentially or have an impact. So I understand the premise of what's been put forward here and why this is being looked into. I do encourage the exploration of options that do not involve river crossing that would affect us in this way. A bridge is not just a bridge, in my view. It changes neighborhoods. It changes communities. It changes the field of what you're invested in and the home in which you build. So it's also not just about bridge that we're building now potentially. But it's also about the future lanes that could be added. You were saying, Mr. Ellis, that in 8 to 10 years, additional lanes would be added, right? So what does that look like also? Could potentially be impacted now, but in other 8 to 10 years. We're all thinking about that and so on. And so with the focus of the policy meeting on Monday, being the vote, right, of whether you're pursuing the study, I just wanted to come here tonight and share my thoughts with all of you, some of the sentiments from my community, and just state my opposition to the river crossing. Bring it to the that and thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Is there anybody else that would like to make a public comment? Anybody online that would like to make a public comment? Did we get any correspondence in the last couple hours? Okay. All right, that being said, I believe we're already on to adjournment, if that is correct. Oh, future agenda items, okay.
I think we'll be revisiting a couple of the documents. TIP and CMAC or no. Sorry.
UPWP or we do?
Yeah,
Okay.
And the right.
So 6E and 6F.
A couple of those are gonna be moved because the policy committee will have already voted on, right? Coming meeting.
Well, not on the tip, right?
Complicated. So the item E, we are not voting on this month. It's out for a 30-day public comment, and you are the public, right? So if we read the document, give public comment.
Good.
Yeah. Also is out for public. So if you know something, please give your public comment. There is a difference of amendment, which is urgent, which is on the agenda for a vote, and it's a request from VDOT to move funds around. So it's not on your agenda, but it is on the policy agenda, but that's a single item, whereas this item is a whole new tip that we are developing. Because you have to, I think it's every 5 years you have to write it. So this is the new one, and it's currently in comment. So the next month says comments, not 5 months there, couple of weeks maybe, and then votes for those 2 items. So do you wish to comment? So in the next about 2. But do you know when the expiry date is on public comment?
Sorry, for which one?
The 30-day public comment period that we started at the last policy meeting, when does that expire?
To the 17th.
So up until 17th, give us comments on these 2 documents. In the public comment period close. Go to the policy meeting.
Okay. We did. So, yeah, our next meeting is June 14th. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, see you next month. Thank you.